Uh, I'm using Audacity like it's the good old days.
Yeah, no, it works, man.
Yep. All right, Taylor, what's up, brother?
How's it going, man?
Doing well, man. Long time, long time.
I know how you been. How was Spain?
Been good, dude. Oh, it's awesome, man. It's awesome. But you're living in paradise still, man. You're still in Hawaii, right?
I am. Yep.
That's awesome, man. Uh, how's it been?
Been good. Just living the life. Quit my 9 to 5 back in March, which was awesome.
Okay.
And yeah, just been doing video work since, and raising a kid and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
man.
kind of crazy.
Yeah, I love your beautiful young family, man. High energy. Anna, is she doing well?
Yeah, she's doing awesome. Business is doing good, and yeah, we're thinking about maybe having a second kid so Reef can have a sibling. So
Nice, yeah.
we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
Days
Water
like
my
today, it's like in question.
Oh, man, I bet. Dude, so for those who don't know, Taylor and I we uh met in Hawaii. I used to live in Hawaii for a bit, and Taylor is a G. Taylor has a background in training long distances. I think it wasn't triathlon you did in college, right? It was something else. It was track,
I
right?
did cross country.
Cross country. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you're
G2.
a stud, man. Tell me about your cross country days and how that got you to transition into triathlon.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess how it started, all kind of triathlon started was I in high school I was doing cross country and I had gotten injured like my sophomore year. And so like to stay in shape, I my dad suggested that I train for a triathlon
Yeah.
um, like over the summer. So I just like swam and biked because I couldn't really run as much with my injury. So I had like some hip issues, and so I went kind of the triathlon route, and that kind of like it kind of got me hooked because I liked the idea of changing events, which was fun because it wasn't just like strictly running. So it
Yeah.
changed up the monotony of the training and so that's kind of how I got into triathlon. But my first triathlon was a sprint triathlon in high school. I ended up taking first, and so that kind of like
Let's go.
yeah, kind of gave me the green lights. Like, okay, this is something I should pursue a little bit more. But then I did like 4 or 5 in high school, and then just like sprint and Olympic distances, and then after high school, I came from a very competitive high school in cross country. And so pretty much everyone on my high school team went and ran D1 or D2. Um, and like it was deep enough to where there was like a good 20 runners in my high school that, um, uh, we all went to college for running and everything.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, I didn't immediately go. I took a year gap between high school and then my actual college career, but eventually made my way onto a team and came out here to Hawaii. And yeah, and that's, I don't know, I wasn't, it's kind of funny. My college career, I wouldn't say was as deep as my high school like training, but I learned a lot. And once you jump from high school to college too, it's a whole nother level of intensity and length too, because the races get in high school it's like a 5K, in college it's an 8K and a 10K race.
Huh.
Um, and so and yeah, just the training's a lot different too when you get to college. At least mine was we were doing high mileage, so we were doing like 100-mile weeks pretty often.
How do you
Uh,
get a kid to do that though? Like the mental game, Because I feel like, yeah, the distances might get longer if you're an adult, a young adult, but the mentally though, I feel like obviously prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet at all. But is it the team? Like, how do you get everyone to be on the same page? Like, hey, let's do
yeah,
this difficult thing.
I mean that's a great question. It's never something I really truly sat down and thought about, but like I honestly think what made it like bearable and like worthy, like a worthy of pursuit, is the fact of it was a good team, it was a good camaraderie, and like my high school team, like I said, we were so deep, and there was a good group of like 20 of us that were just, and we all kind of clicked and vibed really well. And like
Yeah.
when you have a good team, it's always good to battle, and like as long as you have some competitive nature in you, it's easy to kind of like grasp onto that. And so like in college too, it's just a matter of like having a good team, and the fact that we were here in Hawaii and we got to literally run through the jungle every single day
Let's
and
go.
like run through the hills was just a lot of fun. And so we were constantly exploring it. So that was like a big aspect to it that I think really like drove me to enjoy it.
Mhm.
But I mean, also just like for me, I'm a very competitive person too. So like the aspect of just getting better and beating my teammates, and
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. I think beating your teammates kind of comes first in like a sport like running, because without that, then you don't really have a competitiveness to train. Like the you don't have the competition in training, then you won't really have the desire to like compete in or as much desire to compete in like races and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the team aspect was a huge reason and like why I was able to push myself that far, but also like I don't know, I've kind of always had this like grungy mentality towards,
Goggins.
yeah, just kind of not quite a Goggins, but just like a desire to see how far the human body can go and
Yeah.
like finding that limit and keep pushing it. I feel like I've always kind of had that
Nice.
desire.
Yeah, and then that's something that can definitely be trained, but it's much easier if you start off young with that. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your Ironman in particular,
Yeah.
because when we met, you haven't done the 70.3 yet. Yeah, I think it
Mm-mm.
was, I think I have it written down here. You were supposed to do that. That was supposed to be in June, right? In Kona,
Yeah, I did that June
2021.
2020, I think.
Okay.
No, it would have been 2020, 21
Okay.
because of COVID and everything.
Right. But that
Yeah.
that one you completed no problems, right? But it was because of that race that you qualified for the world championship, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's crazy though. You qualified for the world championships, which is also supposed to be in Kona, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be in Kona, but because of COVID, they kept delaying it. So they first it was supposed to be in Kona 2021, October 2021, but then like literally a month and a half, I think it was like 45 days out, they decided to move it again. Um, and so they moved it to February,
Mhm.
and they said we're still going to hold it in Kona. And then in like the first week of December, they changed it again, and said that they're going to split the participants, and half of them are going to go to do a world championship in St. George, Utah, and the
Mhm.
other half are going to go to Kona. And we actually got to choose, as long as you were able to choose quickly enough. But I
Uh-huh.
actually chose to go St. George because I just didn't know. I didn't want to deal with the possibility of it being pushed again.
Right.
Uh, and the funny thing is now they're actually going to be moving the world championship race to Nice, France.
Huh.
So um, there's kind of like this aura around Kona, Kona, Kona.
Yeah.
But the fact that I live in here in Hawaii and that I've raced on that course multiple times, I just felt like I wanted to try something different. So I chose the St. George course.
Okay. So that opens up a whole different thing. Because you were open to trying something new, were you upset that was postponed? I remember at first you were upset at the first postponement to February, but when they
Yeah.
postponed again, were you still upset or were you like, okay,
Well,
let's
it's
just
funny is because they held 70.3 in 2021 of June
yeah.
of 2021. And so the race was set for October of 2021. So it didn't make sense to me like why the state of Hawaii would allow a 70.3, and it was like half the participants that are in the world championship race, but like the venue and like the area at which they hold the finish line and everything is like three times as large as the normal one. So yeah, I was upset, and I think the hardest thing was is you put yourself in, especially Ironman training, like it's twice a day every day for at least 6 months. And the fact that you just kept pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. So there was like never really a rest. Um So I was pretty frustrated because it was like I had started at the beginning of the year of 2021, kind of like this goal to do the half, and then if I qualified for the full, then I would pursue the full. So it was like 9 months of training, essentially. Like I felt like not necessarily wasted, but just kind of, uh, you train to peak, and when you train to peak, it can be really like debilitating if something gets pulled under you, or like you get injured, or things like that. So if I just felt like it was just kind of a little cheated that I was out of this experience. But then it's also like you got to think, okay, like if you're in a race too, you can't just like have that mindset. Oh well, oh now it's over. I got a flat tire or something, or
Mm,
oh I didn't have the greatest swim. I got to move on to the bike and the run. Like you still have a long day ahead of you.
right.
And so like I kind of brought that mentality towards the training. Like I was mad about it for a day, but I was like, oh well, I'll just kind of stick to it, and if they move it again, oh well. Um, so
Good
that's
to,
kind of
yeah.
where my mindset was, and that's kind of how you have to be. You can't really be upset with the things that you can't control.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's interesting. Yeah. And it's a good positive mindset you had. I mean, obviously you did it, which is great. But you touched on something that I think I'm not really familiar with. My brother, I think I told you about him. He rows. He's also an endurance athlete. He rows. He rowed in high school and college, and now he's rowing for like an adult team and on the Potomac River here.
oh cool.
And you just said training to peak. Like, what is the Ironman training like structure looks like? Say so you work backwards from the race day. Is that what you're saying? Like, basically have to like work. Say you have a newbie. Obviously, you can't have a newbie at the World Championships. But like, say you have someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and they have a race day for a endurance event. How should they structure that?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of like to think of it, and like I've done some coaching too, so I kind of have some background with that as well.
Right.
And just even through all my running days and everything, and all my running training plans, it's kind of a similar tactic in terms of the build up. And so, like, if you're going from couch to Ironman, like, um, really, like, ideally, you'd want a full year, like at least.
Okay.
Uh, but realistically, I mean, people probably need longer than that to get to that. But essentially, yeah, you kind of work back from race day. Like essentially, so race day, you got your 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a marathon. Um, so you kind of got to like break that down and be like, some people train months for marathons. So well, I got to bike 112 miles on top of that and swim 2.4 miles. So like structurally, like week one of you know a 6 month training block, which is typical for like an Ironman, is like if you're gonna have one Ironman race. But even if you were to have multiple Ironman races in one year, you kind of break it up into blocks or quarters. Typically, like a block of training is like 3 weeks, and then
Okay.
typically, so your first 3 weeks of training are going to be in a Ironman block are going to be more minimal, just getting kind of like your feet and your arms back in the water kind of thing, just um, doing small mileage, um, not necessarily doing anything high intensity or intervals yet, but just like a building your base. And then after the 3 weeks, you typically have like an off week, which isn't necessarily an off week of training. It's just a less volume of training.
Okay.
And so to give you like an example of what that would look like, so for an Ironman, you'd probably swim a total of 3 times in the first week, bike twice, and run twice. That would
Okay.
be like your with no days off. Um, the first 3 weeks of training, and then you'd have a block where, or like the off week where you would do, you'd swim twice, bike twice, and run twice,
Mhm.
and it would only be like 30-minute sessions that first like 3 weeks, and even the off week. But then like the second block, you'd then jump, from like 30 minutes sessions to an hour to an hour and a half sessions, and then you typically have 4 to 5 blocks leading up to an Ironman. And so each block, your volume of your training, so it increases. So like instead of an hour run, you're going 2.5 hours, by the end.
Okay.
And you're doing these 5 hour 100-mile rides or 150-mile rides at the towards the end of your training sessions, towards the end of the training segment or whatever. So and the same thing with running. Like running in college, we would train to peak in college too. So you train to peak towards the end of the season when you have your like more championship type races.
Uh,
Same thing in Ironman racing. Um, so like you still do quite a bit of volume throughout the training, and people call it training through a race instead of like peaking for a race. You don't have this taper period. So like typically if I was going to peak at like for a marathon, I'd have like a 6 to 10 day taper period where I don't run as much and I don't do as much high intensity. But if I was going to train through it, I would just do like a normal week of training where I'd have 2 hard workouts and, you know, a couple long runs and then just do the marathon whenever the marathon was that
gotcha.
week.
Okay.
The same thing with like a triathlon too. People train through like a lot of the pros, they'll train through a lot of these 70.3 races. They'll typically maybe only do one Ironman leading up to the World Championship race, like one full distance Ironman.
So is it recommended to at least hit the full distance before the actual event then?
No. So for biking, yes. But you would never want to like do a full Ironman distance, like swim, bike, run in one day leading up to the race.
Gotcha.
But you may have like 100-mile ride with a mile swim or something that day, or you know, there's I think a couple of my training sessions, I could pull them up. I would do like a 90-mile ride, like a 4-hour ride, and then hop onto a 2.5-hour run directly after. And those are called brick sessions.
Yeah.
So where you do like a bike run or a swim bike. And those are always long, lonely days.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like in terms of peaking, it really comes down to what's your A race, like what's the race you want to perform at. And then when you do that, you kind of prime your body. So you towards a race, you would do more speed interval type workouts, and do the distance, and then like 6 to 10 days out, you'd kind of start to taper off. And so your you know, overall training volume comes way down the week prior to the race, and then you're essentially firing on all cylinders for the race day kind of thing.
Gotcha. And so a lot of these athletes though, they like you, I mean, they have multiple big races throughout the year. Are you supposed to just is it counterproductive to peak multiple times a year? Are you supposed to have an off period? Like how does that usually work?
No, so I mean, it depends too. It depends on like what distance you're trying to tackle. Um, but it's not uncommon. Like really you want to give yourself between peak periods. And there's different science around it, and different people are different people are different too. So like,
Right.
you know, you may have someone who recovers a lot quicker and can peak, you know, twice in a month or something, or but for like myself, it really takes me like 2 whole months to really come around and to have another like A type race.
Okay.
Um, so like if I'm going to be performing and giving my complete all out 10% of my ability, then I would, you know, I wouldn't structure another like race I'd want to do really well at. And I'm not at the level of like pro or anything, so I'm not peaking as much as I should be. But like even in my off days, I even like kind of or on my off periods where I'm not necessarily have a race on the schedule, I'll like kind of I don't have like necessarily a structured training plan when I'm in my off periods, but I'll even in my off periods, I'll like have goals that I want to hit throughout my off period.
Gotcha.
Like, oh, I want to do a 18-minute 5K, you know, in 3 weeks kind of thing. And that'll kind of be that goal for that, you know, 3 weeks. And that's kind of how I structure. I've been on an off season now. Well, I just started actually a training block this last week. I'm training to qualify for the Boston Marathon this year.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I've been on an off period for a good 6 months leading up to this. So,
Nice.
yeah.
How were you feeling in May 2020? Was it 2021? Yeah, it was the
2022. Yeah.
world. Well, how were you feeling that day, the World Championship game? Yeah, day. You at 100%?
Honestly, no. I was kind of dealing with a little bit of like a sickness, like a cold,
No.
um, leading up into the race. Like the week prior, I had like kind of come down with like a scratchy throat, and I was like, oh, this is like worst timing, right?
Yeah.
And traveling there, going to a whole new environment, going from training in like hot humidity to kind of like a colder, dry climate, was kind of also, I think, a shock to the system. That's why I kind of caught a cold, or my body just kind of reacted differently. But the morning of too, that's the other thing too, is all in my training, I'd never done like a wetsuit swim. And so leading up to the race, I was actually kind of psyching myself out. I done wetsuit swims like in high school and stuff, but like
It's
I
like a
hadn't done
different
it.
choice not to.
Yeah, well, the water temperature was like 58 degrees.
Mm,
Um, and so like just knowing where my training numbers were at and like what I was performing at prior, I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to hit my swim time that I want, because I'm just gonna be so freaking cold. But yes, I mean, day of, I didn't. The other thing too, like most people don't tell you, is like you don't sleep the night before an Ironman. You just don't. It's just got too much adrenaline in you. And the
oh,
people that can, like, more power to them, and they've probably done hundreds of Ironmans to the point where it's just repetitive nature for them to just, that's their groove point, is where they just, racing is their groove. So for like someone who's kind of like a newbie to the full distance Ironman, you just don't sleep the night before.
my gosh. Yeah.
Uh, because you go over your race plan a million times in your head. You go over your nutrition. You think, oh, did I pack all of my bags right? Did I, you second guess everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, once like the gun went off, I felt actually pretty good.
Nice, nice.
Uh, but leading up to it, I wasn't necessarily doubtful. And that's the thing, is like when you tackle these endurance events, you have to like go with the mindset of I'm going to finish, and not like, is it possible, or like, and of course it's possible. Like
You're right.
hundreds of thousands of people have done it. It's possible. Of course it's possible. You just got to do it. So stop thinking and just do it.
That's right.
That's kind of like the mindset. And so like once the gun went off and I jumped into the water, the funny thing was I missed my group call. Like when they do the age groups going into the water, I missed it. I didn't hear them say it. So I literally I did like a full on half-mile sprint in my
What?
wetsuit from like where my bike was all the way to the, and I was like skipping through people, and I literally jumped in with like the last three people of my age group.
Oh,
And
nice.
I wasn't wanting to do that because I wanted to be able to like stick with a pack.
Right.
But the good thing is the age group behind me was like the 30 to 35 age group, and that typically tends to be like the quickest swim age group. And so I had some pretty fast swimmers on my feet, and so that kind of pushed me to push a little harder on the swim.
Nice.
But yeah. But
Oh,
I mean, overall, like I felt really good until like 8 miles into the run, honestly. Like swim went according to plan once I got in the water and got settled. Bike went according to plan. I lost some nutrition on the bike because I had hit some like bumps in the road,
like the
some
goo?
cracks, and a water bottle filled with like 800 calories. I just like lost it, and so I kind of had to work off the on course nutrition, which didn't really sit too well with my stomach, which I think eventually led to my like I had some like GI distress on the marathon.
Gotcha.
Like 8 miles into the marathon, I hit the marathon, was hitting like 7:45 mile pace for the first like 8 miles. I felt good, and then I didn't have my nutrition, and I took a goo that was on the course I'd never had before, and it just like my stomach was like, nope, no more. And also, I think it might have just been flavor fatigue too, of like constantly eating, high sugared, gels all day.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something most people don't understand either when it comes down to like the like full distance Ironman too, or just like any really endurance event, like 100-mile race or whatever. Um, and it's funny, the 70.3 race actually in Hawaii, I didn't even like my nutrition plan was kind of like super basic and super beginner. I was like eating power bars and just drinking Gatorade. And then on the run, I decided to not take any Gatorade or until like mile 10. And so like
Did you
I
cramp up?
felt like no, actually, surprisingly. I had salt pills, which
Okay.
I knew like from doing marathons, I knew I like would take salt pills. But for whatever reason, I was like trying to do this more like natural path, like only natural substances. So I had like I was doing RX bars
Yeah.
on the bike. I had an RX bar on the run, and then I like survived the run just off of like salt pills and water.
You're an animal.
Which
What?
going looking back, I would never do that again. But
Dude.
you live and you learn, and that's kind of like the process. And I think that was I think one of the biggest benefits to the race being like the full distance race being postponed
Mm,
multiple times. I was really able to dial in my nutrition plan because I think even in the moment where I like started to have some GI distress and my body was rejecting everything I was putting in it, I still I had been to that point in training before, so
good.
I knew what to do.
Nice.
Uh, so I kind of like stuck to Red Bull on the run um, towards the end of the marathon, which Red Bull does give you wings. I can attest.
Absolutely, man. It's good that you know what to do so you don't get in a panic. When I did my 70.3 in Arizona, I hadn't done any. I've done a few of the brick workouts you're talking about where you do one event followed by the other. I don't know what happened, but between the T2, so the between the bike and the run, my Achilles, or it was like I thought it was my calf, but it felt like it was the Achilles. It just wouldn't work. Like I couldn't walk. I couldn't run, obviously, so I couldn't walk. And I was like, oh my gosh. I ruptured my Achilles 100%. But then I realized I've seen an Achilles rupture like with Kevin Durant on like it just snaps. I definitely
Yeah.
don't have that. I'm clearly standing under my own weight. I can just walk it off. So I walked for like a minute or two, and then I was like, you know what? It's gonna hurt anyways. Let's just run. And so I just ran with this crazy pain for like I don't know 5 minutes, and I was like, you know what? It's not that bad. Who's gonna carry the boats? And so just kid just went, and eventually, thank God, it went away. I don't know what it was. And I'm glad that you're familiar with all these moments. Do you know what that was? Like why that pain down there was so strong in T2?
It probably was something to do with the initial like shock of coming off the bike and then onto the run. Um, I had a similar thing happen to me in T2 as well, where my quad, like I sat down to put my shoes on, and it literally just like my right leg just couldn't move. It was a
Uh,
weird feeling.
yeah,
Um, you're probably low on sodium. You probably needed something. And then once like your body got moving again, and that's the thing is like once you come off the bike where you're putting probably a good effort at the end of the bike because you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna get to the end of the bike. So you kind of put in like kind of a push towards the end, and then you go immediately into running. And that's why like that is the hardest transition. Like the swim to the bike is kind of more natural because you're kind of like I don't know, you're kind of at least that's what people tend to say is the bike to the run is the hardest transition. If you
yeah,
don't practice that, um, it can also be just like a cadence change as well. Like you might have been pushing like 100 cadence on the bike, and then you immediately go to the run where you're pushing only like 70 cadence, and your body just like so used to that repetition. Your tendons were so used to that being twisted just right in certain ways and stuff. So it's just getting used to that and like feeling tight. Like there's multiple times in brick workouts too, right? I had done like a hard effort on a brick workout on the bike, and then it was supposed to be just like an easy run.
yeah.
But then your body's so accustomed to pushing out this 100 cadence that I found out on my runs, I was pushing this higher cadence on my runs, and I was going way faster than I like should have ever been going on that run. But um, yeah, your body does weird things when it goes into these like endurance events, and like
Yeah. That's for sure.
I can't wait to find out what it does like on a 100-mile running race.
You're doing
Have
that?
put I'm trying to. Most of them you have to either qualify for or get lottery picked. So I put my name in for Leadville this year and for Mont Blanc in France.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Um, those are both in August. So I think I didn't get the Mont Blanc one. The Leadville lottery is like the end of this month. So I'll see if I get into Leadville. But
Fingers crossed.
yeah, so we'll see. I don't know where it's, and then there's also another one in Utah that I can do the 50 miler without a lottery, so I might do that one and step up to the 50. But the 100 milers, those tend to go for like 24 hours, which should be interesting. I hear like there's a lot of hallucination and like
Yeah, yeah, I heard that too.
on that, which I'm kind of excited to see where what my body does in those moments.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just pure, not even starvation mode, just like survival mode, You start talking
Yeah,
with your ancestors.
but it's also like that chemically thing. What's going on in your brain? Like it's probably released so much dopamine already that it's like I don't know. I know there's I wish I knew more research on like the chemical output that your body puts through physical exercise. Um
The runner's high is real. I think that's what is that, serotonin that gets released? But like the runner's high is for sure real. I think for me, I start feeling good on a run after like mile 2. I start feeling really good.
yeah.
What about for you?
I mean, it's funny cuz I look back on my life and I really feel like I've only had runners like a true like there's like the runner's high where like you feel good after a run. Like everyone pretty much feels good after a run. Your body releases some dopamine and like that's just a natural occurrence to running and after especially after you're done running,
Right.
but like there's also just like those moments when kind of what you're kind of pointing out to is like the runner's high where you just feel like you could go forever or
Yes.
like um you could push a really hard pace for forever kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really like I've only had those moments like maybe 4 times in my entire life. Out of the hundreds of races that I've done, I've only had it during like 2 races. And
Wow.
like one was in high school and I was running the 2 mile and I literally just ran away with the whole thing. It was not like like in the like leading up to it, I didn't even feel like I was in good shape or like I didn't feel like I was in like a position to win, but I ended up winning that 2 mile race and it was on the track. That was like the first time like I was like hooked. I was like, holy shit, like
Yeah.
what what just happened? Um and then the other time that I've had it during a race, I was doing a half marathon in Idaho,
Yeah.
and that's where I grew up. And it's a pretty tough course. It's called Zeitgeist. Um and it was like mile 7. I felt good up until like, mile 7, but then we hit like this hill and I was in like the front group. It was me and like my buddy who I had been in high school with, so we trained together. And we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, "Let's go! Like, let's just drop everyone." And we ended up running away with it. He ran like a 1:18. I ran like a 1:21 half marathon. This
Wow.
was like our junior year of high school, and um, it was like one of those moments where it's just like, "Whoa!" Like it just all clicks. And then I've had him, since like just on runs and training runs. I feel like I honestly training for triathlon though I had it more often. I'd feel like so I'd probably say I've had like even just training for Ironman, going do these long brick workouts. I don't know what it is about these brick workouts, but I always felt like I was just like I got some kind of mojo here that I can keep riding on.
Yeah.
And then I got it towards, and it's also I think it's also just like finish line like draw, but like when you're getting closer to that finish line, especially like in a marathon or at the end of Ironman or 70.3. I don't know how it was for you, but it was like once you knew it was like only like a mile left or like a 5K left.
Mhm.
Like for me, the Ironman, I went like mile 8 in my Ironman World Championships. I was hitting like 7:45s up until mile 8, and then I dropped to like 9-minute miles. enter like 10-minute miles for like the next 8 to 12 miles. And then once I got to like 5K left, there was just like something in me that I was just like, let's just get this shit done.
Wow.
And my last mile of my Ironman was like a 6:55. And then like, but like the entire race, that would have been impossible in my brain, right? Like those 12 miles leading into that, it would have been impossible in my brain. Like I was just telling myself, just like stick with it, just keep running, like just at least keep like running movement. Doesn't have to be fast, just keep running. But then for some reason, that like finish line draw was just like it just like ignited me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just full gassed it towards the end, which kind of makes me think, oh, I could have done some more within the race. But like at the end of the day, like you put forth your best effort on the day, right?
Right.
And honestly, I was pretty pleased with uh, my overall performance there. I think I could have gone a little faster just because of my GI issues that I was having in the marathon. But
Well, that's wild, man. To be able to
yeah,
guess, that's not even second win. That must be like fifth win. I don't know how you could do that. Just take off like that.
yeah, like a fifth win type thing. And that's the thing too, is like you had the same thing on the bike too. I don't know about you, but you probably felt it. Like I said before, like when you're getting towards that like transition, you're just like gotta get there, right?
Yeah.
I had a on the bike. The cool thing about the St. George course, it was a super hilly bike course. I think it had more than like 8,000 feet of climbing in total, or
Wow.
just under feet. Um, which like Kona only has like 2,000 feet of climbing.
Wow.
So like the difference in training leading up to it was like I had to like really focus on hills. Um, but yeah, and the cool thing about the St. George course, the last like 8 miles are like pretty much all downhill, but it's like at the very end of the bike too. So you're like you had just been climbing for 4,000 feet
Oh,
and you're gassed, but then it's like all straight downhill right into the T2.
oh, you gotta do
And
it.
that's probably what caused some of my cramping was, going from like, because the last couple miles it's so steep that you can't really pedal. It's just like uncontrollable. And so it's probably what caused my cramp. I like,
Probably. I mean, you can't resist it if it's basically on a platter for you. Like, let's go.
yeah. No, it's funny. I looked at my Garmin watch afterwards and my top speed was like 53 miles an hour on the bike.
Jeez.
And I think the speed limit on that road was like 45. So it's like, it's
You could
pretty
get it.
cool.
Yeah, pretty sick. That's
I
cool.
was cruising real fast.
Awesome. Well, all right, Taylor. It was really good speaking with you, man. I mean, um, I have really fond memories of us swimming to that island on Kailua, Papua
Yeah,
Island.
that was fun.
What was that, a quarter mile? I think it was swim there and back. So
Yeah,
half.
I think it was a half mile
Yeah,
full there and back.
that was great, dude. And I really do need to thank you for that because I was staring at the island the whole time we were living there. I was like, I gotta do it, but I can't go by myself because my ex won't let me. Like I can't go. There's like sharks or something. But as soon as I shared it with you, man, like the day we met, I was like, hey, are you down? You're like, I'm more than down. Let's go. And so thanks for that. That was great.
Well, that's the funny thing is the first time I met you, my wife was doing a photo shoot and of you and your ex, and um, you like meant like briefly mentioned you were trading for a triathlon or something. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, whoa, this kid's trading for triathlon, sick! Like,
Yeah.
let's do something together. So that was like, I don't know. I always like try to latch on to people that are, because there's kind of a small community, but like once you like, it's kind of like a brotherhood where you kind of just click. There's
Absolutely.
not this there's a really good camaraderie in triathlon and just in running in general too. So like if you're willing, and that's the cool thing, it's kind of one of those things like you're willing to go to battle with that person,
Yeah.
And I think kind of like, I mean, you're in a battle with your own mind, but like if you can help someone battle through their own mind, I think that's like the ultimate goal, right? Is like that's what kind of racing has come to me now is like if you can't help others around you, then why are you doing it? And so like even when I'm racing, I like try to pick up others who are struggling, and I would want the same for them, for me, right? Like if you're in the middle of a race, you're kind of in a dark spot, you want someone to come up and uplift you, or like give you that, one thought, or that like, come on, let's go, or how are you doing? Like what can we, what can you work through, kind of thing. And that's always like the uplifting part about triathlon and racing in general too, is like, especially these long endurance events where it's not necessarily like balls to the wall or guns blazing straight out of the gate kind of thing. Um, it's definitely these moments everyone has a dark time in these races. And
Yeah.
so if you're uplifting other people, it also uplifts yourself. So like I'll find like, and it takes like a lot of like your mind preservation to like realize it. But like if you're in a dark spot, just start chatting to someone next to you and then like, or try to be like, hey man, let's go. Or
Yeah.
like I started doing that in college when we would do these like long runs of like 14, 15 miles, twice a day kind of thing. Some of the teammates would be like, like lagging behind or something. And then I found that like if I were to go help them out or just like go chat with them, get them like their mind off of the pain kind of thing,
Yeah.
then you can kind of channel that energy and like turn it into something positive. And I think that's like the biggest thing with running, and like it teaches so many life lessons,
Hmm.
because like if you can go through the pain now, then you can go through the pain later. And if you can turn that into a positive, then and help someone else out in the process too,
Yeah.
then it's all that much more powerful. And so like just in life and in general, like as long as you can work through the pain, then pain's not forever. It's gonna stop at some point.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, like I think that's the biggest thing that keeps having me come back, is just like the camaraderie with other people. And like it all goes back to like when in high school, like it goes full circle of the team that kind of brought me up and like introduced me to the pain kind of
Uh,
thing, is the same reason why I keep coming back, is the people that are also I can live and work through that pain with kind of thing. um
yeah.
and that's the thing, is like that's what it's all about, right? Is
Hmm.
you know um being helpful to lift others. And that's the biggest thing, is like with endurance sports or just physical feats in general, lifting or going to the gym or anything like that, is like if there's not support, then it can be really lonely and really hard. And like it also opens the doors to have direction and to gain knowledge and to improve yourself. And so like
Yeah.
you're always going to learn something from someone else.
Yeah,
I think
man.
that's the coolest part.
You hit the nail on the head. And as social beings, which is what we are, having that community in these dark places, in these moments of tremendous effort, which you don't really expect to have community, is just one of those treats. When you're in the shit and you have people there with your same uniform, or even like on a race day where everyone has the same objective and they're all going through the shit with you, it's contagious and it makes you want to jump in again and again, which to an outsider might look a little crazy because you're doing an insane amount of distance. But yeah, it's something about that community that really, I think it's the glue that brings people together.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. Like if I can encourage anyone, just try it. Like
Yeah.
you'll join a running group, join a triathlon club, like, or like go out in nature too. That's another big aspect of it. It's just like being out in nature and like moving your body, and like
Yes.
movement is life. And if there's no movement, then there's no life. And so if you're sedentary, then
Let's go.
you're gonna be stuck to the couch your whole life. So if you don't do it now, then when are you gonna do it?
Love it.
uh you know we're creatures of habit. As long as you keep doing it, then I mean, I've been running every day pretty much since I was like 12 years old. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I probably haven't had more than like a 10-day break in that whole period of time, other than like if I was injured. But even if I was injured, I'd still be in the pool, or still, just because it's something that your body craves. And it's also just, if you go back to like you know times before modern society, you would always be moving, always be walking.
100%.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and I like what you're putting out, man. Like you're putting out some good stuff. So
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. But it's basically the same idea. Movement is medicine. It really is. You wanna get moving, you feel better, even if it's just a walk where you're not like killing yourself, just breathing outside in nature, getting some sun. I'm so jealous of you, man. You're getting so much sun right now. What I mean, it's January, but what's the temperature like over there?
I think it's like 85 today, and
Man, screw it, man.
I can show you my view if you want.
Yeah, yeah, if you want, man. I mean, uh,
I'll show you the view here.
are you
I'm
still
like, yeah.
are you still in Wailua, right?
Yeah,
It's a nice spot. Nice, dude. Just peppered in some clouds up there. You can't draw a better sky.
I know it's beautiful out here today for sure. So
For the people listening, Taylor is, if you haven't gathered it yourself so far, he's an animal, right? And I went over to his house once in Wailua, and you can look us up on Google Maps. We went to Kiana Point, which is the most western point of Oahu Island, and there and back. That was like 14 miles, I think it was.
yeah,
And talking about this same idea we were just talking about, like you're obviously a much more skilled triathlete, and especially like on the bike, you were just crushing it. But yeah, you were pushing me along, like we were trying to like finish it somewhat together. But yeah, I mean, I could feel the camaraderie like right then and there. We had met each other only like a week at that point, but it's something about doing these hard endurance type activities with people that really is something special.
yeah. I totally forgot about that ride.
Yeah.
That was like such a staple ride for me. I did that so many times, like that back and forth between here and Canada Point,
Mm-hmm.
so many times. So it's just like one of those things. But I'm glad you brought that up because I totally forgot about that.
Dude, it's sketchy, man. I can't believe that's part of your like staple of your training because we're right. There's no shoulder, right? We're like
Yeah.
there, and then you just see these cars just winding, like flying by us. I mean, it's good for the adrenaline, I guess, but Jesus.
I couldn't tell you how many cars I've flipped off though.
With reason, dude. These guys are getting ridiculously close. Or maybe we're getting,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, they finally repaved the roads out here in the North Shore.
Yeah.
So training, it's kind of funny. They did it all after I kind of have stopped training for triathlon for right now, at least. But they also opened the Wailua swimming pool now.
Oh man.
Like literally like a month after my race or the World Championship race, they opened it back up after it had been closed for like 5 years.
It's your
So
sign to get back into the Ironman, maybe.
I know I've right now the goal is to qualify for Boston this year.
Yeah.
And like I kind of have this mindset, at least like I've kind of written it down in my journal and everything, and like been like it's not to qualify for Boston, it's to like exceed that expectation. So like really I have a goal for myself to go like sub 245, which is like a 6-10 mile. So like that's my goal. Like and I if you know that I just get that 15 minutes of leeway time if I absolutely need it. But
Okay.
that's like if I absolutely need it. So like I guess like my mindset and like just going forward too is just like don't just have like the goals that like just qualifying for world championships. Make sure you for certain will, like
Mm,
always reach for the higher, don't just go for the standard.
love that.
And that's kind of like my goal and like my mantra this year is like don't just go for the standard, could take it like a couple steps further.
Yeah.
And so like that's my goal for like Boston this year. And like I am nowhere near that right now. I am nowhere near that pace. And so like I mean, like just for example, like today I did like a 5 mile progressive run, and my last mile was like a 6:23. But like I'm like I have to hold that. I have to hold faster than that for 26 miles. And
Wow.
so like I'm starting like January 1 was like start date, but I was sick, so I kind of pushed it off a couple weeks. But like now, like I'm in it. I'm like 2 weeks into my training, and I'm like nowhere near the pace I need to be, for like the full distance.
Gotcha.
So it's like it's a little overwhelming, but it's also like if I don't have that goal to be faster, then I'll just settle for the less, and I'll
Right.
like just enough, right? I don't want to be just enough. I don't want to like be at like mile 24 and be like, I have to hit these next 2 miles at like, exactly this pace or else I won't, qualify. I want to be like for certain, like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm 10 minutes ahead of that, kind of thing.
That's
So,
really, yeah, that's a great way to do it. And you might even surprise yourself.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, man. That's
I
insane.
picked a fast course. So, I should be able to at least have some leverage there, and it'll be cooler too. So
That's
yeah.
exciting. I might join you, man. My brother, he's gotten really into running, which is wow. I don't know. Are there really tall runners? Is that a thing? Because he's 6'4", 6'5". Is that like commonplace?
Yeah, I would just say it's like just a longer body. So like if you think about it, it's less their stride has to be less than like someone like me who's, 5'4",
Yeah.
and like I was like even my younger sister is like an amazing runner. She's done Boston already. Like smashed the Boston qualifying time for her age group, which is the fastest age group. But she runs like a sub 3 hour marathon. My younger sister does.
Wow.
But she's like 4'9".
Yeah.
And so I'm like, the amount of like effort and like the amount of like your cadence has to be way higher than someone who's like 6'5", you know?
Yeah. And she's
Like
taking.
there's things about this. Her legs are like, a foot shorter than someone else's. So like her stride, you know, like her cadence, she just has to be on top of it more. So it's like it's kind of funny. They're runners too tend to like marathon runners tend to be a little bit like lengthy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty common. And like pretty much any running, you tend to have people that are a little bit like at least 5'9" or above.
Gotcha.
But
Because yeah, my brother
yeah,
he's found a new love for it, and he did a half marathon in DC, and now he wants to do the full marathon in DC, and he wants me to join him, and so it's in October, and so I do have enough time to train for that, right?
oh, totally.
Yeah. What do you
I'd
think?
say like 6 months time frame. Like if you're going from like if you've just been like running a couple times a week for cardio and then just going to run for a full marathon, like 6 months is adequate.
Okay, cool. Because
Like completely
I
adequate.
haven't really ran longer than a mile in a while. I I've been doing. Have you heard of Sprint 8?
Yeah.
I've been doing Sprint 8. But for people who don't know, Sprint 8 is a like insane like hit program sequence, whatever, where you sprint really hard for 30 seconds and then you walk for 90 seconds and then you do that 8 times. The first time I did, I almost threw up. And because and I made sure to do it fasted because I knew I would have thrown up. But yeah, I mean, doing that, it's gotten easier, but that's completely different muscle fibers you're using, obviously. So I need
Yeah.
to completely shift my training.
Well, if you want someone to coach you, I like made training plans and stuff
Oh no, wait, let's
for
do
people
it.
like I call them like couch to marathon. So I've made like couch to marathon programs as well as like if you want to step it up a level, there's like another level too. So
Awesome, man. If I bet there's people listening to this who also want to do that. Do you host your plan on like a website, or do they have to like DM you, or?
yeah, they can just hit me up on Instagram. I could set it up on Training Peaks. Um I just haven't done that quite yet. I kind of wanted to like experiment with my like 5 people that I was doing it with and see how they did, and then like if they felt like my program really worked for them, then
Yeah,
I wanted to like branch it out there. So I'm kind of in that step now where I gotta figure out if I kind of want to just host it on a website or what. But
yeah,
I
man.
haven't like fully fledged
Yeah,
marketed it out. But yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to have a training or a coach, really, I'm more than happy to. It's always good to have someone in your corner, like
yeah,
cheering you on, and also like having that direction instead of going out the door, just going for a random run, like making sure it's like calculated is always like that was the biggest thing in Ironman training too. Is just like having a coach and then knowing exactly what workouts to do.
yeah,
Having a training plan that like is like very structured is like important because then it takes the guessing out of the game
yeah,
and you know exactly what to do. So yeah, man, if you're gonna do a marathon,
yeah, man.
do it. If you
Yeah.
want to do a half marathon, kind of like leading up to it, come join me in Utah in June.
In June, okay, that might happen, man. Yeah, yeah.
It's I'll send you the info right after this, and then you'll have it.
All right, brother. Well,
And
dude,
then I'll just sign you up. Actually, I'll do
No,
Dave. I don't know if you know David Goggins. He does that. People commit to something, he'll just do it. He'll just sign up for them like on the spot.
no way. That's so funny.
He's like, you say you're gonna do something, I'll make sure you're gonna do it.
Well, that's so brutal. I actually did something pretty similar. So for the first ever like 70.3, this was I think it was before COVID. Yeah, it was February or something. I talked to three other my friends, Mikey, Daniel, and Michael. Mikey's always down for everything. He's an animal, right? So we all signed up for Chattanooga. We got on a phone call. We're like, hey, we're signing up for Chattanooga 70.3 in Tennessee. And we all signed up on the call. COVID came, and then they're like, hey, like you can postpone this. You're not gonna get a refund, but you can postpone it. Mikey said, I'm just gonna do the postponement in Chattanooga. And then by this point, I already moved to Hawaii. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna just move it to Arizona and do it in Arizona. And then the other two guys are like, oh, you guys were serious. Yeah, no, we're just gonna small the charge. It's fine. So they just like paid for their spot, but they never went. But
Yeah.
signing people up really gets people on the hot seat real fast, dude.
It's funny because that's kind of a similar thing that happened with me. My buddy was like, yeah, let's do an Ironman, like totally joking one day. And then I like signed up and he's like, oh shit, I have to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he signed up and then like he did like 3 weeks of training with me. And then I think there's also like I have like this intimidation factor, I think, on some people that I just kind of like train higher than most people, or like especially people that are going from like couch to
1,000%, yes, dude. Yeah, background is pedigree.
and so like I think I just kind of like I let on way too much that he needed to do like so much, and so he just felt like he was never gonna be able to get to that level, which is partially true. I don't think he ever would be able to get to my level, but like from where he was at least, and he just like gave in. But I was like, still to this day, I still bug him about it. I'm like, dude, like I gotta sign you up for another one. Like, what are you doing?
You're signed up. Check your inbox.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll sign you up after this phone call, and then
Oh man, I don't know, man. I want to be in Europe for sure in the summer. So
oh,
the October, I think it's October. It's the Pentagon, or it's the Washington D.C. full marathon. I don't know who's hosting it, but that's gonna be in October. That's the for sure. Like I told my brother in his face, like we're doing that. So
yeah. Well, if I don't qualify for Boston for whatever reason in June, I kind of have like backup races, and I'll consider that one. I have a sister-in-law who's out in DC. We've been meaning to go out there, so
oh word, yeah, we can make a whole thing out of it.
yeah. Or if we might be going to Switzerland too this summer.
Oh,
I don't know.
sweet.
We'll see. So if you're there in Europe, maybe we'll have to meet up.
100%, man. We'll make it happen. I know it because you
Cool.
what you mean.
I'll
Obviously,
I'll find some race to sign you up for sure.
an animal. All right, man.
All right, shoots, man.
Take it easy, brother.
Good talking to you.
Good talking to you, man. Peace out.
Cheers.